The Mets postseason got off to a good start with an 8-4 win over the Brewers in Milwaukee on Tuesday night. Now the Metropolitans, they are one win away from advancing to the division series. So let's talk some Mets playoff baseball. We're going to do it with the co-creator of Just Mets. His name is Michael Barron, and he joins me now. Mike, how are you doing after this Mets win to open their postseason?
I'm excited. I mean, it was a great win yesterday, and we saw everything that they're great at, offensively, the grit and the character. And, that's why I described it yesterday as a great character, inspirational type win for this team. And that's what they've been all about, especially in the last week.
Yeah, they absolutely have. Mike, we're going to start with this. 6 times in the last 19 games and twice in the past 2 days, the Mets have scored 5 or more runs in an inning. We saw the team put up a 5 spot in the 5th inning in Game 1 against the Brewers. What has been working for the Mets offense to be able to put up these big offensive innings together lately?
I think it's 2 things. I think it's contactability, and I also think it's this aggressiveness that they've all of a sudden showed in the last, week to 10 days. They've run into some very good pitching between the Braves and Brewers, to end the regular season. And yesterday, they, for the last few innings, and they were, or at least earlier in the game, they were struggling a little bit against Freddie Peralta. But their ability to make contact, they're a line drive, gap-to-gap kind of team. They make hard contact. And keeping the innings going, keeping the train going, and plus that aggressiveness, I think has really helped them to put up those big innings and pull away in these games. And most importantly, set the tone. That's what they did. They changed this. They changed the whole script on the Brewers in that 5th inning, even though it was back and forth until then. But it was that aggressiveness, that determination. The Jose Iglesias seems to bring to the table. It rubs off on everybody, and that's what's helping them to put up these crooked numbers and pull away in these games.
Yeah, it's been huge for them over the past month, and you saw the same thing in Game 1 of the series. Now, we saw Luis Severino. He had some shaky times during the first 4 innings with Milwaukee runners on base last night. What did you make of his ability to get out of those situations, as well as manager Carlos Mendoza sticking with him through those situations?
Well, I think you nailed it right there. Carlos Mendoza, has a really good feel and a good idea on the pulse of his entire pitching staff. And I think, maybe another team, in fact, the Brewers pulled their starting pitcher probably prematurely, but Carlos Mendoza knew, given the state of the bullpen, he had 4 pitchers that were probably unavailable, that he needed to get more out of Luis Severino, regardless of the outcome. And he was trusting what he knew what he knew of Luis Severino, with his history with the Yankees, knowing his personality and his ability to get through that situation. And it turns out he was right again. That's the thing. Carlos Mendoza seems to always push the right buttons with his pitching staff. May not work out all the time, but he always knows his situation. He knew he couldn't go to the bullpen. He knew he needed more out of Luis Severino, and Severino delivered for him, even if it wasn't his best start. It was, again, like that grit and determination to get through it and to use what he had in his arsenal yesterday, which wasn't a whole lot, to get through those 6 innings, which was monumental for this team in this bullpen, given the circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely monumental for him to get through those 6 innings, as you mentioned, and also the trust there from Carlos Mendoza, trusting his pitcher to get through it. Now, Sean Manaea, he will get the start tonight in Game 2. What do you think his approach will be against a Milwaukee lineup that is facing elimination and definitely hungry to put some runs on the board? What will Manaea's approach be here against this Milwaukee lineup?
Well, I think you're going to see fewer sweepers than he threw the other day. I think he was a little sweeper happy, and he hung a few, and it got him into a lot of trouble early, and that knocked him out of the game. He's dropped down with this arm angle, after the second half, into the second half, and that's really helped him become the kind of pitcher he's become. He's very difficult to pick up, specifically from the left side. I think you may see more sweepers against lefties than you will against righties, but I'm looking to see him use his sinker more. And obviously, he needs the command. He didn't have very much command against the Brewers 5 days ago. So I think he'll bounce back, and he'll be more like the pitcher we saw, leading up to that start. It's a big outing for him, but I think he's going to be fine, and the adjustment's going to come with using the sinker and the fastball more.
And the Mets could definitely use a bounce-back performance from Sean Manaea here in Game 2. I want to talk to you about the hitting, because we saw the Mets hitters produce against Freddie Peralta and the Milwaukee pen in Game 1. How do you think this Mets lineup matches up against Game 2 starter Frankie Montas here?
Well, to be honest, it doesn't match up very well because Frankie Montas eats up right-handed hitters. He's much more vulnerable against the left-handed hitters, so I could definitely see Carlos Mendoza going with Jesse Winker again just to create a little bit more balance. But, in the end, Frankie Montas is not their best pitcher. He's hittable, and I think we saw that to an extent the other night. Although the Mets were playing very tight against the Brewers on Friday, or on Friday when he last pitched. So I think we're going to see a little bit different approach. That same aggressiveness that we've seen the last since Sunday, really, in Milwaukee, that didn't exist in their last start against Montas. But the matchup itself is difficult because Montas pitches pretty well against right-handed hitters.
So, Mike, we'll see what the Mets can do matching up against Frankie Montas. But here's a stat that is going to make Mets fans happy. At least I hope it will. In 8 previous wildcard series, the winner of Game 1 has always advanced to the next round. So here's the question. What must the Mets do in Game 2 to take care of business and move on to the division series?
I think it's simple. Stick with the aggressiveness offensively, right? We saw them flip the script against the Brewers on Sunday when they started forcing the issue, manufacturing runs, creating runs with stolen bases, and being more aggressive on the bases as well. I think today should be no different. Yesterday they did that. They did that maybe to a lesser extent against the Braves, but certainly yesterday they were following the same script that the Brewers were following against them in the first 2 games of the last series in the regular season. I think it's important the Mets win today. Not so much, they don't want to be pushed to the edge of a cliff, but I think by winning today, they get themselves 2 necessary days off. I think that would be huge for this club right now, given the schedule over the last week or so. But in order to do that, they're going to need to stick with the plan offensively, and hopefully they get a good outing from Sean Manaea. He can at least keep them in the game, keep it close so they can pull away with that strategy.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Mike. The Mets could absolutely use some days off if they can take care of business in Game 2 tonight in Milwaukee, as the Mets will go for the sweep in the wild card series. That is Michael Barron, the co-creator of Just Mets. Check out his work there. Mike, a pleasure to talk some Mets baseball with you. We'll see what happens tonight in Game 2.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.